All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our 25th video session. Today we're going to be interviewing Ajay Gupta, the founder of the Kahani Project. But before we get started with interviewing Ajay, we're just going to talk a little bit about what we do at Impaction and then introduce ourselves in 2 sentences or less. So as you know, Impaction is an online community that empowers people to make change in their local communities. The purpose of video sessions is to check in with our community members and essentially have people brainstorm with social entrepreneurs, help social entrepreneurs solve challenges, but also just a way to get more face-to-face with international communities. So today we're interviewing Ajay Gupta, but we'll get started with our introductions. I'm Shivani, one of the co-founders of Impaction, and I live in Chicago, Illinois. Tanvi, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Tanvi. I'm the product manager with Impaction, and I am in Boston.
Awesome. Sukanya, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sukanya. I'm one of the co-founders of Impaction, and I'm based in Texas. Ajay, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Ajay. I'm the founder of the Kahani Project and also the founder of this company called the Skills Cafe. And I design games, I tell stories, I do a lot of play with children and adults.
Great, thank you, Ajay. And what about you, Shorjo?
Hi, I'm Shorjo. I'm new to Impaction, one of the users of Impaction. I'm based out of Mumbai.
Great, thank you. All right, so Mirabelle will be joining us later and she'll introduce herself. But like we said, today we're interviewing and speaking with Ajay Gupta, the founder of the Kahani Project. The Kahani Project, Kahani means story in Hindi, is a not-for-profit, volunteer-driven organization that is making stories more accessible to children around the world. Ajay infuses songs, dance, and play into his storytelling sessions, and he loves to reach those kids who don't have access to libraries, books, and storytellers. Ajay, do you want to add anything to this introduction before we get started?
No, that's perfect. That's awesome. Great.
Great, thanks. So Ajay, just the first question. Can you please tell us a little bit about how you embarked on your social entrepreneurship journey?
Great. That's a great question to start off with. So the whole not-for-profit and Kahani project happened very suddenly. I was part of a process called the Dialogues in the Dark. It's a group process where you have to do a whole set of various activities with complete strangers or people you've just come to know, and completely in the dark. And it was one of the most powerful experiences that I had. And after the process gets over, you realize that the facilitators are all visually disabled. Yeah. And that was a great moment for me, very deep moment for me, where I'm a very visual person. I used to work with theater, with digital arts, multimedia, and I figured that everything that I was doing till then was completely very visual in nature. And so this whole thing triggered that how could you do something which was in the space of non-visual mediums. And then, I started working with the visually disabled, started a program in my organization, and then subsequently started the storytelling in the Pune Boys Blind School, which is in Pune, Maharashtra. And then I wasn't really a storyteller then. I was just trying to kind of hold a space for these children to listen to stories. And then we realized that we needed more storytellers in the community. And because of my background in theater, I realized, hey, I could tell stories as well, and started telling stories. And then I've not stopped since then.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. So what problem are you trying to solve through the Kahani project?
Okay. So that's a very very important question. So if you see, there is a lot of, especially in a country like India, there is a huge boom in children's literature. So when you were 5 years old, maybe, or 6 years old, how many books did you have access to? You probably had already access to a library in the school. By the time you were 10-year-old, you probably had a couple of libraries, probably a community library, a school library. You went to university, you had a whole range of things available to you. But for a visually impaired child, that is not true. Even in some of the schools, which are, by the way, amazing. They do a lot of great work with these children. We found that there was a complete lack of accessibility, access to stories, and primarily because Braille is a great format, but it's also a format which is difficult to maintain, difficult to kind of create copies of, difficult to keep so many of them in the library. You can only have one or two copies. So we figured that there was this great need for nothing but children and listening to stories. So that's how it kind of, that's the core philosophy. That's where it began from. And then it kind of started to branch out that it's not only that the visually disabled children have a lack of access, but there are lots of communities, at-risk communities, communities which are slums or bastis, roadside, construction laborers. All of those kids, they're teeming, those areas, those communities are teeming with kids, but there are very few storytellers, there are very few storybooks. So that's where we come in. We only work with that every child should listen to as many stories as possible. That's our only thing that we want to achieve.
So
does that answer?
Oh, hi Maribel, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. I left my headphones, so I'll be practicing when I'm talking. Kind of noisy.
No worries. Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly? Can you hear us? I think you are on mute.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the question.
Can you introduce yourself really quickly, and then we're going on with the interview right now.
Okay, sorry, I interrupted the interview.
No, you're good.
So just quickly, my name is Maribel Rodriguez. I'm from Brooklyn. I moved to DC to study social entrepreneurship. I'm an educator, and also I take photographs to show the value immigrants bring. So these are the two main things I'm doing. Thank you for your time, and I'm excited to hear these.
Thank you, Maribel. So just to catch you up, Ajay was just talking about his work with the Kahani Project and how he's aiming to solve the accessibility with giving kids, especially in India, more visually impaired kids, more access to stories and books. So Ajay, a follow-up question to what you were saying is, with the Kahani Project, what types of narratives are you trying to tell kids who are visually impaired? How are your narratives a little bit different than the current narratives that kids have access to?
So kids need play. They need fun. They need a lot of affection and love. And the storytelling space is just that. It's this beautiful space where you sit with the children and you don't think about the thing that we try to do is not think about any moral values or we're not there to do that. We're just there to have kids enjoy stories and take them into these beautiful fantasy lands, chase dragons, go after demons, laugh and dance and sing. That's what we do. So the only types of narratives that we don't do, so we don't have a to-do list, we have a not to-do list. So we try and avoid things which are which have stereotypes in them, So a lot of stories just go away because of that. So no stereotypes. We try and not do religious stories. So although there are lots of great stories in the Bible, in the Mahabharata, but we try to avoid anything which is overtly religious. And we will try to keep anything away which is got the social structures in place. So caste and all of those hierarchies are out of the window. So that leaves us with a huge bunch of stories. And what we also try to do is we try to do stories from across the world. So I personally believe that when you tell a story of a North American story, a native story, or a story from a folk story from Japan, you're basically helping the child understand world history, world geography. You're expanding their mind. So that's the narrative that we try to that we try to use. Fun, play, songs, dance, get to know the world.
That's interesting. So when you talked about like the not to do list, and that was my immediate question, like what is left? And it seems like there's a lot left, that like there's different ways that children can learn about the world that may be quote unquote unrealistic, but can still teach them like lessons and like the ways that things work in the world. So can you tell us a little bit about, I remember like when we had a personal call, but like a little bit about the impact that you've made on like the kids so far, and how this is like your work has helped them.
Yeah. So I don't know if I can go and do like a before and after measurability test for this, or do an evaluation. But the greatest measure is when one of the kids from the school actually, if you were to go to visit the school and you said that, okay, let's listen to a story, 8 chances of 10 they've already heard that story. Yeah. So in our 4 years of the after school storytelling sessions that we had with the children, these kids who were in second grade to all the way to about 5th grade or 6th grade, they probably heard more than 500 stories. Yeah. And stories from across the world. And a lot of them would then, once they had started listening to stories, they had started loving reading and stories, they would go on to much more complex stories. So they would read much more complex Marathi literature, or whatever literature was available. And some of those kids who actually graduated out, when they face life crisis, and I'm in constant touch with some of them, they actually go back and say, hey, Ajay sir, you remember that story in which that little kid did this? If that boy can do it, I can't I? Yeah. So I don't know if there is you can really measure the impact of that. We do a whole lot of work with this brilliant organization in Pune, Maharashtra. And if you have a chance, you should probably get them on your project as well. They're called the Doorstep School. They work in Mumbai and Pune. So we do a lot of these programs with them where the thing is that there are a lot of these communities outside the city, and the outskirts of the city. And these kids are usually kids of migrant laborers or migrant workers who have come in from various parts of the country. And the kids there don't necessarily go to school. So Doorstep School tries to kind of get them enrolled and take them to the nearest school. But how do you engage the community? How do you kind of go into a slum and get attraction? So what we would do is we would just go in. So I would go in as a storyteller, and we would do like a 2-hour storytelling session with the children and do play and dance and music and everything. And the kids would come out. So we would be the typical, the street, street storyteller who would come in and the kids would just follow. And because the kids would come in, the parents would follow. Yeah, and if the parents came in, then these the Doorstep School volunteers would be able to kind of get them to enroll their kids into the school. So we probably enroll more than like 1,000 kids into the school through these sessions. But is there a measured a quantitative assessment? No, and I don't think that's also something that I want to do.
Ajay, I have a question for you. So when you
Yes.
say students, there are so many government schools in India. Have you
Yep.
anytime tried partnering with government schools and trying to engage students with these stories?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question because that's one of the projects that we are doing now. So I have moved out of Pune and we are in Bangalore currently, and we work with a school, a public school here, a government school. When I say public school, it means a government school here in Domosandra in Bangalore, and we are doing we are doing a project called Project D. So D as in the letter D, and D stands for Diva Swapna. Diva Swapna is this brilliant book. It's almost like a manifesto written by Gijubhai Bedeka, who was a Gujarati educationist. He wrote the book way back in the 1920s, and it was about running a full school curriculum using only stories. So we are working with this school where we kind of go in every Saturday. We have like a 2 hour, 1.5 hour, 2 hour session where we are doing values, good citizenship, understanding world, geography, history, gender, violence, all of these things through stories. So you're absolutely right. That's one of the things that is the current item on our agenda.
Can you just know like how many government schools you have covered so far since the inception of your organization?
So schools, we worked with 3. One was the Pune Boys Blind School, which is also a trust. It's actually not a government school, but it's more like a school run by a trust. So it's a residential school for the blind children. They had about 250 kids there. There was similarly a girls blind school in Pune, and now the school in Domosandra. So I usually don't work too much with public schools, like not public, sorry, private schools. But the focus is more on communities in schools for the. Oh yeah, by the way, we work with a school called Manovikas, which is a school for the various cognitive disabilities. That's again in Pune. So that would be the 4th school. Yeah.
So going with what you said, how long generally your project lasts? Is it like a year long or like few months?
So the one in, for example, the blind boys school that lasted about 3.5 years. Yeah, so we literally had kids who came in at 2nd grade, were there till the 4th or the 5th grade by the time we kind of did that. Project D, for example, it started last August and it's still on. We are doing it with the 2nd batch now of kids. It's been about a year that we're working with that school, and the girls' school probably 6 months. Manovikas, Manovikas is more like an engagement. So whenever we are in Pune, we land up and we do like a 2 hours of program. But we have been doing this for almost like 6 months again now. Actually more than a year with Manovikas. Yeah.
I have a question for you as well.
Yeah.
You said about not collecting like quantitative or not measuring quantitative data. So what is your process of actually measuring the impact that you're having?
Yeah.
Or like having goals and being able to reach those? Like how do you measure that?
Yeah. So I know where you're coming from, but let me give you a very very simple example from my own life. So when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, in our Hindi textbook, we had this beautiful story called Raste Ka Patthar. So it's about this guy who is going down the road and he finds there is this stone in the middle of the road, and people are tripping and falling and nobody does anything about it. They just curse the stone, curse the road, curse the administration and move on. And there is this one boy who looks at this. He gets down from his bus or car, whatever he's traveling in, and with all his might he pushes the stone off the road. Yeah, that's it. That's what the story was. 4th grade. Even today, I'm 40 years old, if I see something on the road and I can physically move it, and if I find a person, I would just go and move that obstruction out. Is there a quantitative way of measuring that? So I'll give you another example. So when we used to work with this the blind boys school, you have to understand that this is a school where these boys are going to be there from second grade or first grade till about 10th grade, and they come from all over India, mostly Maharashtra, Karnataka, and those areas. And these are second standard, third standard grade kids. They have never been outside their home, and they are and on the weekends, on Saturday and Sundays, they're missing home. Obviously they're missing home. They're obviously crying, and when the storyteller comes in, so they would come in and they didn't want to sit in front of you. They would just want to come on your lap. Yeah. And they would listen to the story while touching your face, touching your throat, because they're trying to make a sensory experience of who you are and who's the storyteller, and listen to it. And you know that for that 1 hour that they are there with you and they're listening to the story, they're not missing their parents. They are feeling very warm. They're feeling very safe and secure. How do you measure that? Do you have a quantitative way of measuring, that? I mean, I can do a lot of measurement. I can spend a lot of time saying, okay, before, after, what happened, but I don't think that's the point. The point is, can we have those moments of absolute joy and play, and absolute moments of love and feeling secure, even if it's for an hour? I'll give you another example. We did a storytelling just about March in Pune, and this was a stone quarry site. Now, if you've seen one of the stone quarry sites, it's literally the noisiest place you have ever been to, and there is dust flying from the quarry, right? And these kids are growing there. There's a slum, and they're growing there, and these boys are playing. And you go in and start telling a story, and they don't want to leave you for the next 1.5, 2 hours. And you're sitting in almost like a dump. It's a garbage dump, and you're sitting around that, and you're telling stories to those kids. And they hold your hand before when you're leaving, and they're saying, "Bhaiya, agli baar kab aaoge? When are you going to come back next?" I don't know if you can quantify that. So, although I love your question, but I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if there is, I don't trouble myself with that question at all.
So it's interesting. So, like, depending on what I understand with this, since Impaction talks to so many social entrepreneurs, especially with your story, what I'm understanding, or a key takeaway for us here, is that depending on what your mission is or what your vision is, it's not always the numbers or the quantitative data that matters. The qualitative measurement and when you are in the field and what you see out of it can be given more importance than that.
Correct. Yeah.
I think we lose sight of that sometimes, especially. It's interesting because we're a social enterprise, but a lot of us work with data and numbers, and even if we were to deconstruct a lot of like the initiatives that we've tried or we've analyzed in the past, we're always looking at a company's, like, how many people they've impacted, or how many people went through their programs, or how much revenue that they've made, and we lose sight, right, because of like how the structure is laid out, right, where you may have board of advisor or investors asking you, okay, is your impact is a set dollar amount, but at the end of the day, the impact is how well, like, how that other person has been helped, and a lot of that can't be measured, and that's a really, really good reminder. Thank you, Ajay.
I have 2 questions for you. When it comes to you, I'm pretty sure you'll be facing a lot of challenges. So what as an entrepreneur, what are the challenges that you face when representing your organization, what are some of the biggest challenges you face? Like an individual was your enterprise. I want to learn the challenges that you face and how do you overcome those.
Yeah. So I think that the greatest challenge is it's which I have faced is just staying true to what your your core mission or what you want to do is. The moment you lose sight of that spark, why are you doing this? What is it that you want to do with the community that you're working with? That's when you start to lose out. Uh, we did a lot of mistakes. We did started a lot of things which we thought would add value to what we were doing. We realized that for a volunteer-driven organization, which is, and we said no to funding for any sort of funding from day zero. It's very difficult to kind of sustain a lot of these programs. And the more you take on your plate, the farther you get away from your core purpose. And I have found that when I had a long period of break when we weren't doing too much, it was about going back to the purpose to find your energy. Because and to ask yourself, uh, does this energize you still? Do you still find energy in sitting with 20 kids, even after having done like 500 storytelling sessions? You're not a professional, you're not getting paid for it, that's not how you put your food on the table. You're going back, does it still energize you? Will you wake up at 6 in the morning to go to a school and do it again? Yeah. That's I think sustainability has to be seen from that lens. Does it energize people who initiated the who started it all? And if you think that most sustainable things in the world, and corporates also, organizations, um, organizations which kind of keep that spark alive, sustain. So I think I don't know if I answered that question or I got too philosophical about it.
But I have a follow-up question to that. So when it comes to like energizing yourself, especially if it's a volunteer-based organization, do you check in with like the people who you're working with as to see if it energizes them as well? So you're constantly keeping like the team engaged and very mission driven in your work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will find that you're absolutely right. So it's sometimes you don't find the energy yourself, but the community actually reignites or re-energizes. So there have been literally times that because of my other for-profit work that I do, I'm traveling so heavily that 3 weeks went by. I'm not able to do anything with the Kahani, and then somebody from the community just comes up and says, "Hey, we really look forward to having you here," or this bunch of kids really need a storyteller. Are you willing to come and engage? And that's when you suddenly find the spark again. That hey, that's what really gets you back into action again. So for solopreneurs like me who are not deriving, so this is not a social enterprise. I wouldn't call it it's a social enterprise. I would call it a volunteer driven organization that is trying to plug a hole or plug a gap in what we see in our immediate environment. So, and for those kind of people, for people like us, this is a huge area. How do you continue the sustainability? How do you continue keeping yourself energized? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's so like when it comes to like you are a solo entrepreneur, but like when you're working with a team, right, and trying to figure out okay, how do you empower the team of people that you work with to also feel that same spark over time? It's difficult, it's difficult to sustain sometimes. So I know that you're a solo entrepreneur, but if you had advice or thoughts about that, I would love to hear that as well.
Yeah. And this is a great question. You have to, especially with volunteer-driven organization. What we figured is that the initial group of volunteers who kind of came together with me to kind of start this, they will move on. They will find other things, other areas that they would engage with, and that's completely fine. And the ability to know that you need to renew or keep your volunteer group or your community alive is a very essential part of doing something at scale. If you want to do it at scale, you have to be able to constantly go in and engage and keep the community alive. If you don't do that, your existing volunteers will find other things, and that's exactly, because you had a vision, you had an idea, they came in line with it for some time, and then they find other meaning in other things, and that's exactly how it should be. But as a social impact entrepreneur, you need to kind of know that you cannot do everything yourself. You need to be able to kind of constantly get those volunteers on board, keep that and that's a very tough job in itself. And she used to go and pick rags, and then we kind of, when we did the whole storytelling process with them, we did a lot of play. She got enrolled into the school, with the doorstep school. The next time we went, you could already see a certain, a different kid. The third time we went, she had learned new poems. She had started reading about a year later. So very subtle changes with the whole process. Now, was it again because of storytelling? No, it was because of a huge community kind of kicking in and saying, "Hey, we need to take care of these kids." Storytelling was a part of it. It was probably provided the spark for the parents and for the community sending that kid to school. So we do that all the time, and that's exactly the area of our impact, is uh, reaching those kids who don't have access. They could be rack pickers. They could be anybody. Um, Construction laborers. There could be kids who are, for example, the community that I'm in right now, right next door, there's another small community. The kids go to school, some of them don't, and I'm trying to see how we can engage them with a little bit of computer literacy, digital literacy, and all of that. So you're absolutely right. We do all of that. That's exactly the area that we work in.
Okay, so I have a question now. So there are so many children like this in India. There will be like so many storytelling organizations like that inspire students. Children, have you tried partnering with those organizations, or have you come across any such organizations?
Yes. So all the work that we do is actually in partnership with someone. So, for example, the partnership with Doorstep School. There is another company called Edifice Consulting. Edifice is an architectural firm, but they have a beautiful CSR division which works a lot with, in the social sector with children and education. That's there. So we work with a community school in Mumbai. Again, a very at risk, a community of about 60 kids. And if you go to that school, it's the most amazing thing ever. The school is a 6 by 6 feet shack, and it's 2 stories, by the way. And it's got a toilet in there. It's got a makeshift staircase, and there are about 80 kids or 90 kids who study there. And it's an after-school community school. Brilliant. And we work a lot with that community through Edifice. So I'm not particularly that's one of the things that I don't do well. I'm not very good at just kind of going in and engaging with the community directly. So what I try to do is find a community, find an organization that is already engaging with some of these communities, and then kind of work with them. So that's how we do it. But it's been restricted to largely in Karnataka and Maharashtra and Mumbai. So Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, a little bit of up north in Delhi, but not more than that.
Okay, one more question. So, going through what you said now, Pune, Bangalore, Karnataka, they have a lot of companies over there, MNCs, which have got most of the CSRs teams located in Bangalore and Pune. Have you tried partnering with those corporate companies to see if they could bring in their employees as volunteers for your organization? Have you tried something like that?
So, I have found that I don't actively, we do something called Storython. So I don't know if you've seen our site. It's called the kahaniproject.org. We are also on the digital side trying to create the largest crowdsourced library of audio stories. So we have about 700 stories there, which are all crowdsourced, which means they have all been recorded by the community. Old people sitting at home. And one of the places that we have kind of harvested most of these stories, we do something called a storython. A storython is like a storytelling marathon. So we would go actually to an organization and set up a recording booth there, and people would come in and record. So that's how we engage with organizations. But here's what I found is that the effort that it takes to kind of build new volunteers, train them, and have them kind of come in and start doing it is an effort which I have not had the energy or time to engage with. A lot of organizations do that, but you would need a community outreach manager. You would need somebody who kind of manages those volunteers, themselves. I have not had the time or the kind of budgets to kind of be able to, have a community manager or somebody who can manage the volunteers. So I've kind of stayed out of it. But interestingly, there have been a couple of people who actually from organizations who came to the Storython and said, hey, we love what you're doing. We want to stay aligned. And they kind of keep doing things. They record stories, and that's how they keep engaged. But do I do it like a large scale, very concentrated effort? No, that's not true.
Very cool. So shifting to your goals, right? So what are your short-term goals for Kahani Project? What do you want to accomplish in the next, like by the end of the year?
Okay, so there are what I'm trying to focus on is that we've just kind of created with Project D, the work that we're doing with the school in Domosandra. And very interestingly, I'm also, I don't know if it's, if all the stars align, maybe I will. So I'm getting certified as a Play for Peace facilitator. I don't know if you have heard of the Play for Peace organization. So it's a community which does, it's a online volunteer-based group, again, across the world. They are in various parts of the country, world, and they primarily engage with young adults, children, through play. So what I've done now, and that's my current state of work, is to take storytelling and plug in play into it. Yeah. So most of our sessions now have become very playful. Yeah. So a lot of movement, song, dance, and we have created like a 6-week program that we are running with the school in Domosandra, which we have kind of, and so we are doing that study now, kind of doing that, with a couple of volunteers in that school, documenting how things move. And that's a lot to do with, gender equality. It's a lot to do with violence, especially amongst, young boys, stereotyping, also stories and play again. And we want to kind of take that module, that 6-week module, and then do a train the trainer. So like do a facilitation, transfer that, with all the stories, with all the play pieces, to a community and say, hey, this worked here. This is what we did. Do you want to run this in your school or in your nearby community? So I've published the whole the whole curriculum. All of that is ready. We've already done 2 of those play-based sessions in the school, and now we are seeing by September, actually October end, the 6 weeks will get over. Then we know what happened there. What happened as what did the kids go through? We do a little bit of documentation, and then we kind of take that and give it out and say, hey, do you want to replicate it across? So that's what I'm focusing on. The other project, which has been our dream project, which is not taken off, and we did a pilot which was very successful, but we dropped the ball on it a bit, and that's what we would like to start off again. Is this the whole project around making these? When you go to one of these blind schools, if you can make these very cheap MP3 players, audio players, available to the blind kids, and they have some method of connecting to the whole database of the crowdsourced audio stories that we have, which is like huge now. It's 700 plus, and it's growing. Soon it's going to be 1,000, and it's all different Indian languages. So they have access to. So stories are there. The library is there. If we have the front end of the devices and be able to kind of do those pilots with various schools and make those devices available, we know that we can actually work with a lot more kids than we are being able to do it right now. So those are the two very focus areas that we have.
That's interesting, and I would be curious to see, like, when it comes to these train to trainer programs, like, to see the curricula and see like how people are engaging with their local communities. If you had materials or anything that you would like to share, we'd love to see that as well, because I know there are people here that would even benefit from like empowering their local communities. So like the more we understand that our international entrepreneurs are doing, the more we could learn from their curricula and all of that. So yeah, that would be.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we are doing. We are kind of opening it up as a GitHub repository, so that anybody can come in and and license it Creative Commons. So anybody can come in, plug in what they feel should be get added, fork it, modify it the way they want to, and kind of take that from there. But we kind of create the core 6 weeks play and story modules, and then allow people to kind of build on top of it.
Very cool. We have questions still, but I'm checking in with like Maribel, Shorjo, other people. Do you guys have any questions for Ajay?
Yeah, Ajay, I had one question. Two things actually. One, your module, how you said right now, your play and your storyline, that module sounds like it's something that's very scalable, even with and really grow it if that's something you're interested in. That was a very interesting thing. I had one question. My question was, you had said that you don't do any external funding, and you're totally volunteer driven. So with that model, how are you able to sustain it with all the volunteer changeover and continue to drive this organization, especially since it's a solo entrepreneur driven model?
Yeah. so that's a very good question, and the answer to that is that there have been times when we have thought that we're not going to be able to sustain it. I almost every 3 or 4 months think, hey, am I being able to pull this? We have pulled this far. Can you still do it? And then you kind of go back and say that, the problem with funding is the funding is not a bad idea. You've got many people who are ready to fund you. The problem with funding is that then it takes you away. As I said, I don't want anything which takes us away from the core, the core mission or the core purpose that we're working on. And I don't want to spend too much time on, filing papers and writing submitting financial reports. I do that for my other organization. I know how much work there is, and that's the thing that I don't want to. I don't feel completely happy with doing that. So I'm kind of staying away from the whole funding bit completely right now.
No, I think it makes sense. I think I've seen other entrepreneurs doing the funding very closely, and it sucks you dry because when the VCs come in, when angels come in, nothing else matters.
Correct.
All the mission goes out the window.
Yeah. So spend less, spend frugally, but spend your own money. If you're really committed to do it, we fund everything from my other organization that I run. Whatever it can support, it supports. And I know that it's something that the wheels are turning for us. They're not turning for anybody else.
Absolutely.
So what do you think about donations? Like people putting in donations, if that can be an external source of funding that doesn't dilute the impact that you're trying to make. If anything, it's more validated by the people in your community.
Absolutely. I think that's the way to go. I love people who give you $2 or $1. It's almost like passing the hat around. In my street theater days, we would pass the hat around and collect money and then be able to buy our costume, pay for our bus tickets and all. And I think that's beautiful. If there are people who are, because when people put the money out of their own pocket, and it's not $1,000, it's $2 or $5 or $10. That they're doing it because they like what you do, and they are ready to engage. I love the whole open source community, the open source world out there, which works on this model. I think that's the in between, between what we are doing right now and the whole funding. I think that's what we should do.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And
by the way, the first set of 100 MP3 players that we, that we actually 50 of them, which we used the school, were all donations that I received from my own family. So people gave $100, $250, $300, and we kind of pooled that, and we could fund half of the players with that money.
Yeah, absolutely. Like our inner circles are the ones that I feel like it's easier to convince them, and because they've seen how hard that you work and how hard, how much you believe in the vision, and you probably talk to them a lot about the Kahani story. So it makes complete sense. So I have one last question. What is the final message you want to convey to the world about, the question is, what is one piece of advice you would like to give our community of social innovators and entrepreneurs at Impaction?
So I don't know if it's a message, it's just something. I feel that, if you feel about anything in the world around you, which comes to you as something that you don't agree with, make that a call to action. And go after it. So it could be anything. It could be the pothole outside your road. It could be children in the slums. It could be anything. And it doesn't need to be glamorous. It doesn't need to be big. It doesn't need to be profound or at scale. It needs to be just about bringing your energy, your creativity to things that you feel can change your immediate surrounding. Just the world around you, immediate to you. It doesn't have to be I think we muddle up this whole thing about being at scale, doing things that, you know, impacted tens of thousands of people. I think, you know, if you impact just 10, it's fine. It's just fine.
Yeah, that's a really good message. And yeah, that's ultimately what you're doing through education. We have actually a couple of questions from Maribel. Her Skype is frozen right now. But ultimately she's asking, like, are you considering selling audiobooks for children whose parents can afford to pay a subscription and support your work, or you just want it to be open source?
We want it to be open source.
Just open source. Okay.
Yeah, because we actually went to the community and said that, you know, give your voice to an open source library. So I don't feel right about monetizing it at all.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Okay. Cool. First off, just we wanted to thank you so much for your time and being able to answer our questions today. I think I learned a lot, and I hope people watching this and people on this call learned a lot as well. But we would love for everyone who's watching to subscribe to this channel and tell us your thoughts about this channel as well.